This conference is a very unique opportunity for all of us. We have all gathered here to learn from the experiences and the ideas and the experiments that have been conducted by educationists all over the world. And we hope to go back empowered and enriched so that we are able to translate the ideas that we gather here into actions and make a difference in the lives of our students, our children. We are very fortunate that in this session we have three very experienced panelists who have been working very intensely in the direction of imparting character education. I would very warmly like to welcome our esteemed panelists. Each speaker in this session is going to address the audience, and this is going to be followed by a question-answer session. And I think we'd like to restrict to 12 to 15 minutes, Mrs. Wahidi, if you agree, for each speaker, 12 to 15 minutes. And this is going to be, and thereafter we'll have question-answer sessions, which is going to be conducted by my co-chair, Mrs. Aditi Sharma. Let us begin and invite the first speaker. We must remember that any transformation that happens must begin with me, and then the society at large. I am the pivot of all changes. And I think it is on these lines that our first speaker will be speaking, for she's going to be speaking about building capacity to transform self and society. I would like to introduce Dr. Dara Feldman. She is the founding chairperson of the Virtues Project International USA. We are very fortunate to have you amongst us, ma'am. Dara is a passionate educator, speaker, author, coach, and consultant whose lifelong goal is to transform our schools and the systems that support them into environments that embrace the love of learning with the recognition of self-worth. She is the author of The Heart of Education, Bringing Joy, Meaning, and Purpose Back to Teaching and Learning. As a Virtues Project Master Facilitator and a University of Maryland's School of Social Work Positive School Center instructor, Dara has been creating and delivering personal, professional, and organizational development around the world, inspiring individuals to live more authentic, joyful lives, families to raise children of compassion and integrity, educations to create safe, caring, and high-performing learning communities, and leaders to inspire appreciation and excellence in the workplace. She was honored as Disney's 2005 Outstanding Elementary Teacher of the Year, Educator of the Year for the National Association for Self-Esteem in 2009, and Maryland's 2015 Mother of the Year. Can we please give her a loud round of applause? She has huge accomplishments to her name. She is one of the 10 teachers featured in the book One on One with America's Most Inspiring Teachers. Well, she also has had a stint of 3 years as an instructional coach. There is much more to read out about her, but yes, as she's pointing out, I would like to request Mrs. Dara Feldman to please enrich us with her address. Thank you, ma'am. Would you like to do it from here?
Morning. Good morning. It is a joy and an honor to be with you all. I want to acknowledge you for your steadfast commitment and idealism and service to the youth here in India, and you're an inspiration for all of us. So I am a teacher. This means that this is going to be an interactive session, and I trust that my fellow panelists are going to cooperate in a moment when I ask you to play our little follow the leader game. So here we go. First we need cooperation for this. Anyone? Click, please. I'll call on humility and ask, how does it, not going? Thank you for your patience, everybody. So why don't you turn to the person next to you and just take 30 seconds and talk about what's been most meaningful that you've heard so far. Go ahead. Talk to each other. When I raise my hand, it'll be time to stop talking. Go. I can't hear you. I thought in India there's like cooperation and obedience. When the teacher invites you to do something, you do it. Oh, you had to switch it on. Wait, don't. Okay. So, there we go. We're going to begin. Please take a look at this quote. I imagine most of you have seen it already, right? So now comes to the active participation part. You know that we are all born with all of the virtues and some potential. And as parents, you're the first educators, and educators here, our job is to mine, is to look for them. And when we see them, to polish them. And I think Jeff and I will be talking about similar things. But first, let's play a little Follow the Leader dance party. So panelists, please stand up, come to the front, because this work is personal, and it starts with us. In a moment, I'm going to put some music on, and you all are invited to stand up as well. So everybody stand up. Thank you for your cooperation. Just being mindful about what's going on in your brain right now. In a moment, I'm going to put a song on, and we're going to start with our first panelist. Oh, no, there's nobody next to you. So what you're going to do is a little dance for about 10 seconds, some dance mood. And everybody out there, you're going to do what he's doing. And then you're going to pass it to the next person to do something different. And we're going to go all the way down the row. And then we're going to connect in about what does this have to do with character. So hopefully this is going to work. Get ready.
I doubt it, but...
Oh, no. Could you please press play on the computer so we can hear the music? Please, or we'll sing. Okay, you know what? We'll just get happy anyways. So go ahead and just start dancing. Go ahead, just dance. All right, do what he's doing. All righty. Look at this, and now pass it to Jeff. Oh, here we go.
It might seem crazy what I'm about to say.
All right, pass it to the next person.
Sunshine, she's here, you can take a break. I'm a hot air balloon that could go
Pass it on.
with the air, like I don't care, baby, by the way.
Anybody else want to come up? Marina.
Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof.
All right, everybody clap.
Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth.
Shake.
Clap along if you know
All right, thank you everybody for your cooperation. Have a seat.
clap along.
So how you feeling? Energized. Thank you for your patience. What did that have to do with virtues? One of the things that we've already heard is the question, can virtues be taught or are they only caught, right? So think about what virtues did you all just call on or did our panelists just call on in order to be able to do this happy, happy dance party? Courage, absolutely, courage. Takes a lot of courage to be put on the spot and stand up here. What other virtues might they have called on? Joyfulness. What was the evidence that they were joyful? Smiling, absolutely. And perhaps they could have passed. If they chose to pass, they still would have been calling on a virtue. What virtue might that have been? Maybe patience or assertiveness. I'm not dancing in front of all these people, right? So every moment of our lives is a virtues moment. The more mindful we are of them, the more easily we can access them. Does that make sense? So every moment. So I'm wondering, what virtue did you see as you entered the building this morning? Did anybody notice a virtue? Oh, so you're acknowledging that there was cleanliness. I actually saw a word last night. Take a look. I don't know if you could see it, but it says hope. We all walk through the metal detector. And instead of me seeing a metal detector, I actually saw the word hope. Because over the past 13 years, as a result of doing the Virtues Project, my life has been transformed so much that I know that there's hurt and tragedy and so many hard things happening in the world. However, I see the virtues. And that's my biggest hope as a result of our time together, that you're also going to be seeing the virtues. When I was walking yesterday, I saw a gentleman dumping some trash over in the park. And probably prior to the Virtues Project, I would have said, why is he dumping trash over there? But instead, I came from a place of compassion, and I saw that perhaps he was feeding the cows. For real. So it's all about the way that we look at things. So this morning, very briefly, I'm going to talk about some initiatives happening in the United States, while always keeping at heart that when we know that we are noble beings, and we hold ourselves to that nobility, and we know that every single other human soul on this planet is noble too, then the things that we're going to do are going to be quite different for ourselves, for one another, and for our environment. Are you with me? Does that make sense? Okay? So here's a list of some of the character-related initiatives in the United States that I'm going to run through, because we're going to spend more time on the Virtues Project later on this afternoon. So I'm going to also touch on that briefly. So the first one, how many of you all have heard of No Child Left Behind from the United States? Or the way we say it is no teacher, well, never mind, I'll call on self-discipline. Anyways, the Whole Child Compact came into being about 20 years ago when we were so focused on academic rigor and testing. And a commission was brought together to say that we need to focus on the social, emotional, physical, intellectual, and can I get a drum roll? Spiritual domains of a child. This is the United States. We don't do spiritual. And when I say spiritual, I don't mean religious. I mean meaning and purpose. So that comes from ASCD. That's the Whole Child Initiative. And it's about children being safe, healthy, engaged, challenged, and supported. The next initiative is social and emotional learning. How many of you all are familiar with that? So I see a couple of hands. So CASEL.org is the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. And they focus on 5 keys that really support character education. It's part of it. It's self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. I think that you've already heard some of that woven throughout this morning's remarks, yes? Can't hear you. Thank you for your enthusiastic reply. All right, next one, restorative practices and restorative justice. Are you all familiar with this? So restorative practices says that when there's been a harm done, that you give voice to the person who has been hurt, and that you help the person who did the harm be able to see and feel the impact of the harm that they've made, come back and have a conversation with the person who they've hurt, figure out how to make amends, make things right, so that you can bring somebody back into the community. You've heard of the horrible school shootings in the United States, I imagine, right? And what research is showing is we don't need harder schools. We don't need more metal detectors and more security guards. We need to make our schools softer, meaning more connected, letting everyone know that we are one human family, and that's what restorative practices gets to. And then there's a big move, I think in this country as well, that's trauma responsive teaching and learning. There's a lot of challenges that are happening for people, and these are the adverse childhood experiences. And when you're really, really frightened, you react instead of respond. Is this true? And so here you know that mindfulness and breath can help us access our prefrontal cortex. Well, we're just starting to get that information back home. So part of the trauma responsive movement includes mindfulness, breathing, and at the heart is relationships. And then also back home, there's something called character.org. It used to be the Character Education Partnership, and I think it's in part what inspired the work that's happening in the UK. And there are 11 principles of effective character education that you can't see right now, but I'll make sure that you have access to the PowerPoint and those 11 principles. Just know that it starts with identifying core values, and it's coming from the students, coming from the families, and the community. It also gets all the way down to evaluation, and it includes academics as well. Now, here's the Virtues Project. How many of you all have heard of the Virtues Project? How many of you have not heard of the Virtues Project? I just said the Virtues Project, so you should have been listening. All right, sorry, that was a bad joke. Anyways, the Virtues Project was founded 30 years ago when a husband and wife and the wife's younger brother, John Cavlin, they were talking about how tragic it is that kids are killing themselves and each other. Is that still happening? Yes. And they thought that somebody should do something. So they said, why not us? And they did some research, and they found through a Harvard study that the #1 reason that youth ages 14 to 25 gave for randomly committing acts of murder was, what do you think? Could be frustration? What else? Lack of knowing, maybe anger, aggression, could be all of these things. Actually, it was boredom. Not the boredom you might be experiencing by me talking too much, right? But that lack of meaning and purpose. And the examples that I just saw here in India, it gets to the same thing. Oh, let's take a day off, so I'm going to kill somebody. It gets to the heart of the matter, that lack of meaning and purpose. So the founders researched all of the cultures, oral traditions, and sacred texts of the world. And what they found was common to all of humanity were the virtues. They thought, let's awaken and strengthen them in our kids. And they came up with the 5 strategies. Speaking the language, recognizing teachable moments, setting clear boundaries, honoring the spirit, and offer companioning. I'll be going into them more deeply this afternoon and again on Monday. So what I would like to do is share with you a video of one of the schools of character, and this is a high school back home in Baltimore in a challenging area. And what this youth, an 11th grader, talks about the impact of the project. Audio, please, on the video.
Education of Baltimore County this year. And the reason I bring that up is because I went to this summit in San Diego, and one of the key points that Secretary of Education Arnie Duncan brought up is bringing back the Civic Mission to school. And what he pointed out was the fact that the school systems have become so test-centric that we've lost the fact that we're trying to produce strong citizens in the state. And the funny thing to me was when I was talking to my, I would say, colleagues at this summit, one of the things I said was not even as a Baltimore County board member or as whatever other positions I may carry. I said as a student at Kentwood High School, we're already doing this because we have the Virtues Project. And with the Virtues, we're creating individuals who are caring and compassionate and who can go out into the world and use these, implement these virtue statements and these virtues and just become a better person because of it and change the atmosphere, their atmosphere. Like what the Virtues Project has done is empowered each individual, and we all have the ability to decide what type of environment we have around us. And we've decided that we want a positive environment, which is why we do the virtues everywhere we go. And that's the civic mission. That's the mission that we should have in our school systems. That's what we really need to teach the students. We really need to teach them that going out into the world isn't about being the smartest student and being valedictorian. It's about you being an individual who changes your environment, be it your household, your community, your state, or your country.
And you're already doing that here. Thank you all for your generosity of time and welcoming me.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Tara Feldman. What a beautiful presentation it was, and I think it deserves one more loud round of applause. It was so meaningful, and I think she really touched our hearts. And thank you so much for giving us so many ideas, sharing so many ideas that you people have already practiced in the US. Thank you so much, and may I now request my co-chair, Mrs. Aditi Sharma, to please conduct the question and answer session.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And thank you so much, Dara, for your energetic and interactive address. You've woken everybody up, I'm sure. And now it's time for you, audience. As educators, you have a big responsibility. Dara has shared lots of projects that she's been involved in back at US. Is there any questions? Do you have any questions for her? Anybody from the audience? Yes, I can see Farida ma'am has raised a hand.
If you could share a little bit about the 5 strategies that you're using, even though you did mention that you have an interactive workshop session, because the friends, not all of them might be joining your workshop or even coming on Monday. So it might be a good idea if you could, just touch briefly upon those 5 strategies that you mentioned.
Absolutely. I appreciate your thoughtfulness asking that question. So the first strategy is speaking the language. Instead of saying good job when a student is working very hard without giving up, you can say, I see your determination, working hard without giving up. You have that virtue and the evidence. Then when a student is not working hard, you're not going to say, stop being so lazy, you need to work harder, because that's shaming. You're going to invite them to a virtue by saying, what will help you to be determined and keep working even though it's hard? So it's to acknowledge, guide, and then also correct. How many of you all have children? Hands down, thank you. How many of you all are children? Trick question. All right, so I imagine you get this in this country. You say to children, how many times have I told you to clean up your room? Do you say that here too? Okay, so write this down. Instead, you can give them a correction and when they haven't done it, by saying, please be orderly and put your dirty clothes in the laundry basket and close your closet door, right? So you're inviting them to orderliness and you're giving them the evidence. This is the success criteria you want, putting it in the laundry basket, closing the closet door. Are you with me? Okay, that's speaking the language, and then also thanking. So instead of, when all these people are so helpful, they're preparing the food and serving us tea, instead of just saying thank you, we can say thank you for your helpful service, pouring us tea and making our lunch, right? It really gets to the heart of the matter. The second strategy is recognizing teachable moments. And I actually heard Mr. Tawari, I hope I didn't mispronounce his name, but he was talking about teachable moments, that when there's mistakes that come up, don't wait until later and don't shame. Use it as an opportunity to identify the character quality that maybe was missing or needs to be strengthened. So that's the teachable moment. Instead of shaming and blaming, it's naming that character quality. What strategy are we on? 3. I just want to see if you are still awake. All right, the third strategy. So the third strategy is setting clear boundaries, and it's based on restorative justice. The first part is identifying your core values. The second part is, let's say at home, that your family, that you are committed to everybody being responsible. Then you want to list out what responsibility looks like for your family so that you can acknowledge it and guide and correct it if it's not happening, right? And then the restorative justice piece is, if there's a mistaken behavior, saying what happened, what virtue was missing. Let's say that your children or the students were arguing with one another. They're yelling at each other and calling each other names. Well, how can you resolve your conversation or your conflict? What virtue is going to be helpful? And if they say peacefulness, then you ask, what will peacefulness look like? If they can't tell you, then that's a teachable moment, and you teach them, right? But if they can, you give them the opportunity to describe what peacefulness is going to look like next time they're upset. And then finally, give them an opportunity to make amends so that they realize that they made a mistake, not that they are a mistake. Okay? And then the fourth strategy is honoring the spirit. And you all got it going on in India, let me tell you. From the prayers of the children this morning, and the dancing, and the sacred opening, and the honoring, just the connections and the hugs and the love, honoring the spirit is whatever brings you meaning and purpose. And it can be cultural, it can be, individual, but meaning and purpose. And the fifth strategy is the companioning process. It's a 7-step counseling technique to lead somebody to their own solution. Have you ever tried to give youth unsolicited advice? How'd that work? Not too well, right? So all you do is say, what's happening? Close your mouth. You listen with receptive silence. You ask cup-emptying questions. You look for sensory cues. Maybe, what are those tears for? Then you ask them to identify a virtue that will be helpful. You ask a closure and integration question. What's clearer to you now? And then you end with a virtue's acknowledgement. And if that's too much to remember, you just say, what's happening? Call on your own self-discipline. Listen and give them an acknowledgement. And those are the 5 strategies of the Virtues Project.
Thank you so much, Dara, once again for sharing those beautiful strategies. I'm sure each one of you has gained and has learned how at times even we need to be quiet, and like she demonstrated so rightfully, put your hand on your mouth and think before we speak to the youths of today, because they don't want our unsolicited advices. So thank you so much.
May I just add one last thing? So the way to help, the way that I've learned the virtues are using the virtues cards. That's not the only way, but my husband and I have created apps for the virtues cards, the reflection cards, the educator cards, and the family cards. And we actually have them for the iPhone and the Android. So we'll make sure that you get a link to how to access those apps. And if not, you can access them free online at virtuesproject.org. You can just go and do a random pick. So I encourage you, invite you to do a pick every day. It's not just going to change your language. It's going to change the lens in which you view the world and the way that you live the world. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Now I request Abha ma'am to introduce our second speaker for this panel.
The world today is full of challenges, and we need extremely caring, ethical, good citizens. Well, our next speaker is going to remind us of the same. He's going to throw light on character education and responsible citizenship. I would now like to invite Mr. Jeff Smith, but before I do so, I would like to introduce him. I feel extremely privileged to introduce Jeff Smith. He is a visionary, a head teacher, speaker, author, and consultant whose passion and development of a healthy character in children and young people. As the current head teacher of Kelland Primary School and founder member of the UK Association of Character Education, Jeff supports other schools via his training company, WINE, Virtues in Education, which has delivered high-quality character education programs to a growing number of schools in the UK. His 28 years of experience of character development as a teacher and school leader was recognized in 2015 by Birmingham University, who commissioned him to write the Primary Character Curriculum, the first publication of its type for primary schools in UK. Well, he has also co-authored a book titled Character Education, the Star Awards Program, which was published in October 2018. Jeff is a Virtues Project Master Facilitator and has served on the board of the Virtues Project International, a global grassroots initiative honored by the United Nations during the International Year of the Family as a model global program for families of all cultures. His educational work has been highly appreciated by a number of people, by a number of organizations, and we feel highly privileged to have Jeff amongst us. May I please request him to address the gathering?